All right, we are off and running. This session is being recorded. It's usually the first question people ask. So yes, the session is being recorded and I see people on their way in. So we're going to get going. A little housekeeping on the front end. First, welcome. Power BI Power Hour, a beginner's guide to Power BI capabilities. My name is Adam. I'm with Tessellation and Data Coach, our sponsors for this. Housekeeping, as previously mentioned, there is a Q&A module if you want to ask questions. Feel free to use that. Oftentimes people ask questions through the chat. That's okay as well. If you ask questions through the chat, I may not see them. That's the only thing I'll say. And if you want to chat, have fun, be respectful, all good. So our sponsors for today, Tessellation is a modern analytics consultancy. We enable and manage organizations' analytics and self-service teams by educating people, optimizing technology, developing world-class products, and providing sustainable results. Also brought to you by Data Coach. Where most analytics training programs lack depth, Data Coach provides wisdom. Our modern curriculum is unparalleled, comprising video lessons, hands-on exercises, and a capstone project designed around your company's data. Data Coach also offers a truly premium service, one-on-one coaching. And to the main event, we've got Gavin Pedersen with us today. He is Hi, Gavin. I'm gonna do you right and introduce you with all your great credentials. Gavin is experienced in data analytics, business intelligence, and helping teams establish self-service solutions. He has focused his career on developing competencies in the functional aspects of his MS degree in data science. He began his career at Best Buy's order management BI team and later transitioned to an analytics consulting firm in Washington, D.C. Throughout his experience, he has helped lead teams in their analytics journey by developing solutions in Power BI and Alteryx. As a consultant at Tessellation, Gavin specializes in self-service enablement through dashboard and workflow development throughout the Power platform. And I'm happy to also report that Gavin is a really fun guy to work with. He's really smart. And so you guys are in for a treat. Gavin, take it away, bud.
All right. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate that intro. Again, my name is Gavin. I am a consultant here for Tessellation. My focus is primarily in Power BI, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. I got a quick agenda that I want to run through, and then we're just going to hop right into it because we do have a limited amount of time. So on the screen, we have our agenda. So first thing we're going to do is take a quick tour of the Power BI desktop application. I am going to walk you through what Power Query looks like and just give a brief explanation of what we're using it for, or what it can be used for. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time today in that second one where we're going to live build a dashboard from start to finish. After that, I will demo how to publish that dashboard to a shared workspace so your users can access the dashboard. And then from there, also how to connect to the Power BI data set that was created. So without further ado, let's jump right into Power BI if I can get the right screen up. Okay, so this is Power BI. This is our desktop application. And in the desktop application, there are a few different views that we have that we use when we're building dashboards. First one is definitely the one that we use the most, the one that anybody probably uses the most, and it's called the report view. And you can navigate to the three different views on the left panel here by using the icons. So again, this is the report view, and this is where users will build their visualizations, and they can format their visualizations. They can add filters to their dashboards or individual visualizations or the entire workbook. There's also the field list on the right here. As you see, I've already imported data just to save a little bit of time, but I'll address that in just a couple of minutes. As per usual for most Microsoft products, we also have a ribbon on the top where we have some modeling features and you can insert columns, just different menu options up there as well. So that is the report view. The next view that we have is the data view. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It is a view into the raw data that is our data set and that lives behind the scenes of the visualizations that we are creating. I use this view mostly like when I'm creating calculated columns or measures, just to make sure that like the column that I'm adding into the data set looks the way I intended it to, or it's doing exactly what I want it to. It's just a good way to quickly verify that I am building my model correctly. So again, that is the data view. Next, we have our model view. So Power BI is a data visualization tool. Yes, that is what we mostly use it for, is building dashboards and reports. What we also do inherently when we build a dashboard in Power BI is to create, we're also creating data set. And because we have a data set, there's also a data model. So with the imported data that we have, this third tab is showing the visual representation of what that model looks like. And so we can create the different relationships between the 3 different tables that we've imported. So again, this is the data model view. It's good for really just like building out the relationships between the different tables. You can also do some column naming in here and some like role management and stuff like that. So those are the 3 views. I'm going to hop into Power Query, show you guys what that looks like, and just explain what it is, but we're not really going to spend any time there because that is probably for a little bit more of an advanced class. But so Power Query is actually like the data transformation layer that lives behind the scenes in Power BI. So it sort of is a separate tool, but it's in the same Power BI package. And so we get there by going to transform data and then transform data again. And essentially what you can use this for is if there's more data transformations or data engineering or data wrangling or data massaging that needs to happen. If the data isn't in a clean format and you need to get it into a clean format before you can visualize it, this is where the most robust versions of any of those formatting options are for you as a user to be able to do that. There are a couple things in Power BI that you can do, but Power Query is where most of that happens. Again, the data set that we have is a very clean data set already, so not a whole lot needs to happen with it in Power Query, but I did want to call that out as an important component of Power BI as a whole. So I'm going to hop back over to Power BI just by closing that window. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a relationship. So I guess let me introduce the data set first. So this data set is called the Superstore or Global Superstore data set. It's a public data set. It's actually published by Tableau, and it is a office supply retail company. And so it has 3 different tables in the data set. So it's got an orders fact table, it's got a people dimension table, and a returns dimension table. The dashboard that we're going to build, actually, we're only going to use the orders table. We're not going to use the people or returns, but I did bring these in because I wanted to show what this model looks like when you have multiple tables and how to create a relationship. So let's go ahead and create a relationship between orders and returns. So in order to do that, the easiest way is to just grab the columns that match or the keys that match and drag it on top. So we have order ID in both orders and returns. I'm going to drag it from orders to returns, and it's going to create that relationship automatically. And you can see it's created a one-to-many relationship, which is exactly what we wanted between these 2 tables. And we are all done creating a relationship. So basically what that means now is that the dimensions that we have in the returns table and the people table, we can use, and we can slice the data that's in the orders table by the dimensions there in a clean way. So it's a way of allowing us to use multiple tables in one data set. So we're going to work our way back up through the data view here because there's one thing that we have to do. So the dashboard that we're going to be building is a global sales dashboard for this data set. So obviously sales is a currency value. So we have our sales column here. Right now it's just a decimal number. So we have to switch the data format for that column to a currency. So with that column selected, what I can do is go into format and then go to currency. And then it'll automatically switch to a currency data format. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to automatically, or not automatically, but I'm going to adjust the amount of decimal places that exist in this column to be a maximum of 2. Sometimes even if it's auto or even if it's currency, it will add extra decimal places just due to rounding errors or yeah. But so either way, we want a maximum of 2 decimal places. So we're going to add 2 there. And you can see this row, for example, will have an extra $205 and $80. So now we're going to jump in and we're going to start building our dashboard. So the first thing that we're going to do, well, actually, let me show you how to connect to data before I build the dashboard, because we already did that. But I do want to show you how to, because we can't start building a dashboard if we don't have data that we've ingested. But there's a few different ways that you can get data into Power BI. And the easiest way is by using the menu bar up here. And so there's some quick ones for the most popular data sources. But if you don't see where you're grabbing your data from there, you would just go to get data, and then some more options here as well. But the entire library of options would be in more. That should pull up a second window. There we are. So this is all of the out of the box data sources that are available to us, and you can even divide them by types. So file, if you have a database like a SQL database, Power Platform. So again, we're going to be building a Power BI data set and hosting it and then connecting to it at the end of the webinar here. But so file, the original data set that I pulled for here, the Superstore data set, was just an Excel file. So that's how I grabbed that. But again, that's already in there. So I don't think I mentioned, by the way, that on the right here, the fields menu, you can expand this out and you can see all of the fields that are available in your data set. So with that, let's start building our dashboard. So the first few visuals, I'm going to use the exact same visual. It's called a card, and it's the simplest visual that there is, but it's really, really powerful for like just quick hits. If you're benchmarking a measure or you're wanting to just display a KPI, and all it does is grab the value of whatever measure you're using. So again, we're building a global sales dashboard. So the first one that I want is just sales in this card. And so this is going to have just the aggregated view of sales. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to format this a little bit so that it's nice to read, and we can copy that formatting for the next couple of cards that we're going to create. So the first bit of formatting that I'm going to do is switch the amount of decimals on here. So if you remember, I said that switching the decimal places in this view to 2, that creates the maximum number of decimals that we can use on any visual. But if I wanted to switch what is just on this visual to, let's say, 1, then it would round it to the nearest 1. I would go with the visual selected, data label, value 1 there. All right, so now I'm just going to go through a couple of other formatting options for us. So the other thing that I want to do is turn off categories. So category is sales title down here, not title, but it's the sales word down here. I'm going to turn that off because what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a title, call it total sales, and that'll put it on top. I'm going to switch or adjust the font size, and I'm going to add some color to our visual as well, because color makes everything better. So using the color palette that's already there for us, I'm going to go into data labels and switch the data label color. And there we have, actually, let me align the title. There we have our total sales card. I'm going to do the exact same thing, but for profit. So Power BI is really good in that I can copy and paste this and then just switch out the field. So I'm going to Control C, I'm going to Control V, and I'm just going to put that next to it. And again, so I want profit for this one, and profit is another value. So if I want to delete the field, the sales field that's already in there, and go delete. And I add values to visuals. There's a couple ways I can do it. I can either hit that checkbox there or simply drag it over. So obviously we want our title switched as well. And so then this will be profit. And I don't want to use the same blue throughout the entire dashboard. So I'm going to switch the blue that we have here, just to add a little bit of dimension. So we have a color palette that we can select colors from, but if we don't see the color that we want here, we can go to more colors, and any color that exists on like a standard color wheel or any color that exists in between is available to us. So you can just drag this around, or if you have a red, yellow, or red, blue, green value, you could input those values here, or if you have a hexadecimal value, which I do for this one, you could input that there. So I'm going to grab the hexadecimal value that I have, and I'm going to paste it right there. And you can see that the top where the title is has changed color. So now we're going to change the background to the same. And it should have remembered, which it did in recent colors. And there we have total profits, or profits and total sales. So I'm going to add one more card, and it's going to be for profit margin. So I'm going to copy that over again. I'm going to switch title, or change the title to profit margin. Now, we don't have profit margin as a measure that's currently in there. So that means that we have to create it. It's not a measure or a column. So we have to create a measure so that we can get profit margin in there. So there's a couple different ways that we can add measures to our data set. The first way, you can right click in the table that you want to add it to and select new measure, or you can do new measure up at the top here. And it'll open a formula bar, and that's where you can write your DAX formula, which is the language that we use in most Microsoft products to create columns and do like measure aggregations. So if you're like in Excel, for example, and you have a formula bar up at the top, you're using DAX. So that's what that language is, and you can write your formula up here. However, if you're creating like a easy formula that only uses a couple of measures and is a pretty standard calculation, there's an even easier way to do it. So you would just click quick measure, and this opens up sort of like a drag and drop menu for us to create our measure from. So again, the measure that we're going to be creating is profit margin. So the formula for that is profit divided by sales. So I would select my calculation from the calculation menu here. So you can see I have a bunch of different options. I can do aggregates, I can do filters, time intelligence, totals. So in the mathematical operations, I see division. So I'm going to select division. I'm going to open up the orders fields, and I'm going to, again, it's profit divided by sales. So I'm going to drag profit into the numerator, and it's going to sum that entire column. And then I'm going to drag sales into the denominator and click OK. And it's going to create that measure. You can see on the right here. You can also see that in the fields list, some fields have icons next to them. So this icon here denotes number or like currency types of data fields. The calendar is a date field. If you've created a measure, which isn't a column, it's just like an aggregated of one or more columns with a filter or just a simple calculation on it, there's a calculator. So I'm going to change the name of that by right-clicking and go to rename. And you can see actually at the top here, it wrote the DAX for me. So it's really an easy way to, if you don't know a lot of DAX, to be able to create measures and add more usability or functionality to the dashboards that you're creating. So I'm going to rename this as profit margin. You can hit enter or that checkbox there. And then I'm going to swap profit for profit margin. And spell it right this time, however. Profit margin. You can see that it created a dollar value because we're using $2 values as the base in the formula. So what we actually want is a percent value. So with profit margin selected, I'm going to hit the percent symbol there. And you can see that we have 11.6%. And I actually don't want any, actually, sorry, I do want 2 as the minimum, but on this one visual, what I want is it to round to the nearest percentage. So I'm going to open up data labels, and I'm going to go value decimal places. and change that to 0. So I'm just going to add our color formatting now, change the background color. Background there. And there we have our 3 KPIs that are most important on our sales dashboard that we're going to be measuring against. So the next visual that we're going to build is going to be sales by country. We're going to have sales and profit margin actually by country. So we have a lot of like location data, global data in here. So we have region, we have country, city, state. We're going to do country and then do sales and profit margin by country in a table, which is going to look, I'm actually going to shift all of these over just a tiny bit. We're going to look a lot like an Excel table, but as boring as those can be, they can also be super powerful if you're adding sort of the right flair to it, which we will. So to start adding values to this, I am going to insert, again, we want country as the dimension, and then profit and profit margin. So you can see profit here. We have tons of extra decimal places. Thought I had switched that, but I'm going to adjust that onto there. And now you can see that we have the correct amount of decimal places. All right, so now I'm just going to do some formatting to make this look a little nicer. So I'm going to go into grid, and I'm going to switch the outline color where you see the blue, and I'm just going to adjust that to gray. I'm also going to adjust the text size because it's a little small. I'm going to bump that up just a tiny bit. Same with column headers. I'm going to bump that up to 14, change the font. So column headers are country, profit, and margin. What do I want to do? Calibri here. And I also want to align it on the left. All of them are currently aligned on the left. It's on auto right now. But in case we added another one that for some reason didn't get added to the left, I want to make sure that all of our column headers are on the left for this particular visual. The next one is going to be values. So I'm also going to make that a size 4 or size 12 and switch to Calibri as the font type. So the other thing that I want to do is the total at the bottom is not exactly relevant to what we're trying to do with this chart. So I'm going to turn those off entirely because all we want is just the row data for the totals of profit and then profit margin for each country. So I just turned it off by going into totals and then off. And then field formatting, I'm going to select country as the field that I want to format. I'm going to make this a nice blue as well. And then I'm going to add a title. And this is going to be sales by country. And I'm going to have the exact same formatting that I've had for the other one. So white font, blue background. And then I'm also going to adjust the font type. Okay, so now we have the base of our visual, all the formatting that we want. The only other thing that we want to do is to add a little bit more dimensionality. These numbers are great by themselves, but we want to be able to add some, like I said, some more dimensionality to our users of the dashboard to give them an idea of what they're looking at, so they don't just have to sort of guess what is 5400 mean or in relation to the rest of the data set, or what does 25% mean in the rest of the data set. So we're going to add some conditional formatting to both of those columns. So with the graph selected, I'm going to go into the values list on that visual, and I'm going to go on this drop down and to conditional formatting, which you can do on a number of different things. You can do it on the background, which would be just the area behind the value, on the font color, data bars. We're going to do font color. And so that's going to open a window where we can provision the conditional formatting. So we want it to indicate red on a low value and green on a high value. And we're actually going to add a middle value as well. So I don't particularly like any of the reds that are available here. So I'll go to more color, and then I'll just drag that down to a nice deep red, red that doesn't hurt people's eyes if they look at it. Same with green. Maybe about right there. So I want a middle value as well. So in order to do that, I'm going to click diverging, and it's going to automatically populate with on the color wheel. So what is exactly in between those two colors? It intelligently knows that. So for example, if I had a different color for the min value and the max value, it would have a different color for the center. So yellow is exactly what we want. We're going to go ahead and click OK. And you'll see this column here. Now, the farther we go down, the more red it gets. So we're going to do the exact same thing for profit margin. So conditional formatting, font colors, and it will have saved the red as well as the green, and we're going to add diverging. And there we have it. So again, this really allows our users to be able to kind of like fully understand within the data set how well is, or how good is the US doing. So I can also filter or sort this table by just clicking the headers here. So profit margin, so highest profit margin we have, 44%. That's great, but Armenia only did $69. So I guess do better next time, Armenia, but good job on the profit margin. Okay, so that is our table. So we're going to do another table just below it. And actually I want this sorted by United States. Oh, one of the other things that Power BI does is each visual can be used to filter other visuals on the canvas. So for example, if I wanted to filter this total sales profit and profit margin cards to show just the values that are associated with China, I would control click there. And now we can see China's numbers. India, I can control click and add more than one. If I wanted to do just India, I would select just India. So I'm going to add another graph that is quite similar, but much smaller just below it. I'm going to copy and paste that again. And this one, we are going to do profit margin and profit by product category. So I'm going to get rid of country and I'm going to add a category. You'll see that it added category on the right. If I want to switch the order of these, all I would have to do is go into the field or the values list here and drag this onto the top. And I can adjust the size of the column so everything fits nicely on one line. And again, I want to format category to be the same blue that is on the top there. So again, I can sort, filter the rest by technology if I wanted to, and by technology in the United States, and everything's getting filtered. Okay, so the next visual that we're going to add is a map. So again, we have location data in here, and Power BI is really, really good at detecting where in the world those locations are on a map without telling it anything other than exactly what it's called. So for example, the next one that we're going to do is sales by state, and we're going to place that on a map. So I'm going to click the map visual here. Make that a little taller and a little more narrow. And in the location, again, so I want state, and you'll see a map gets populated with all of the states that are in our data set. So there's one dot for each state in the data set. Again, I want to do sales by state. And so how I'm going to do that is I'm going to drive sales into size. And what size means is the size of the dot will reflect the sales value for that area. So if you can zoom in on the US, you can see that Texas is doing well, California is doing well, Pennsylvania is doing well. And you can see in the rest of the world, the size of the dots compared to other states around it. Again, I'll show you if I click the US, it filters this. So now I just want to format it the same way I've been formatting everything else in terms of how it looks. Like with other Microsoft products, I can use a format painter to get this header to look the same as these other graphs. So with this graph or table selected, I'm going to click the format painter and then paint that and adjust the title. And we have sales by state. One of the other things about this type of visual, however, is that it has a tendency to slow things down a little bit. It is a bit cumbersome. So just be aware that if you're dealing with a very large data set and it's not filtered and you're trying to use this and it's slowing things down, that's not uncommon. It needs a lot of resources to process the data in that way. So sales by state. All right, we have 2 more visuals that we're going to get through. And then we'll publish the dashboard and I will show you how to use it as a user and then connect to the data set. So the next one that we're going to add is a trending sales graph. So the best, in my opinion, way to display trending data is with a line chart. So I'm actually going to bump this down a little bit so it can fit a little better. See, it's pretty slow right now. Actually, let's just bump this over. Doesn't look the best right now, but that's okay. Okay, so we want trending sales data. So on the axis, I'm going to insert our date value. So we have 2 different date values in our data set. We have order date and we have ship date. We're going to use order date as the date value for sales. If I go into the data tab or the data view, you can see that order date is 1 column. Another amazing thing that Power BI is really, really good at is something called time intelligence. So Power BI can detect inherent hierarchies in data where they exist. And the easiest way to, easiest example of that is with date data. If you had product hierarchies, you can create those in here too, but date data, Power BI can detect that. So if I wanted to use just the entire date value, I can do that. Or if I wanted to pull out the individual components, I'd expand that all the way down and I see each value within the hierarchy. So it's created year, quarter, month, and day. And so for this chart, all I want is year and month. So I'm going to add year and month to the axes and then sales to the value. And there we have our trending data. And I'm going to use the format painter again to make sure that everything looks nice and clean. Switch the title and do sales by year. So where we have hierarchies, we can also drill through to different levels of the hierarchy. So right now, actually, let me back up. So formatting, one thing that I like to do in terms of formatting a visual is to eliminate redundancies. And so this is a perfect example of where redundancies exist and on a visual that we can get rid of. So for example, we know that this number on the left is sales because we've already called it out in the title. We know that this number on the bottom is year because what could 2011 or 2012 or 2013, 2014 otherwise mean? But we also call it out on the title. So by getting rid of the axes titles, it sort of just cleans up the entire workspace, makes it easier to read so there's not just random floating words, but it also expands the canvas which the visual exists on. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If I go into x-axis and then turn off the title, you can see the line tells us a little bit more about what the data is doing because it has more room to work with. So I'm going to do the exact same for the y-axis, and then I'm going to bump this down just a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so back to the hierarchy. So you can drill through to the different levels of the hierarchy where they exist. And on this graph, the best way that we can do that is using the buttons at the top here. So if I want to do, right now we see this data and it's showing by year, but if I wanted to expand it all down one hierarchy and show the month and the year, I would click this button and then it shows the trending graph. And each one of these peaks or valleys is a month in the year. So that's how I can expand down to that second level of the hierarchy that we have in our field list. So order date, again, we have year and month. If I want to go back, I just click the back button. this is really the most helpful view of that data. Okay, so we have one more visual to get through, and then we will publish. So the last visual is a little bit more complicated because we have to add a filter that doesn't exist yet on the dashboard. So we're going to do the top 5 cities by sales. So I'm going to insert a clustered chart here. And again, we have city at the top. I'm going to click that and it's going to automatically go into the axes. And then sales will go into values. I'm going to format this all before we add the top 5 filter onto it. Did that not work? There we go. Cities, sales. Important to have continuity between titles on graphs. So like it is nitpicky. You saw me just switch it to all caps, but it is important because it I guess puts confidence in your readers that you've built this properly. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with this graph. Actually, we don't have y-axis because we don't have room for it, but or titles on the y-axis. But if this was wider, it would show. But currently it's turned off because it's small enough anyway that it detects that we can't have it anyway. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to display data labels because it can just really help to indicate where each city is. And I'm going to, so the other thing too is clearly we don't want these displayed in millions. It's not very helpful for us to see that New York City has 0.26 million. So I can adjust the display units to thousands. And then I can actually position the data labels in different areas. So if I want inside end, puts it all on the inside of the bar, outside end, do inside base. I like inside end though for this one. That's how we can adjust the data labels. And also we want to adjust the x-axis to reflect the same thousands instead of millions. So display units is going to be in thousands as well. So again, we want top 5 cities. Right now, this is every city in the entire data set, but we want just the top 5. So we're going to close this and we're going to expand the filters panel here. There's 3 different filters that we can apply to a dashboard in Power BI. We can do filters just at an individual visual level. So with the visual selected, I can apply a filter to it. I can also do it on an entire page here, or if I have multiple pages, say I've added multiple pages on the bottom, I can apply it to the entire workbook. So for example, if I wanted more detail on sales, profit, and profit margin, and I wanted 1 page for each one of those KPIs, but I wanted to limit the entire data set to say just the US, I could put a US filter on all of the pages to show this tab is the total sales, or tab 1 is total sales for US, tab 2 is profit for US, so on and so forth. But what we're doing is just the top 5 on cities by sales on this visual. So we're going to apply the filter on city. And we, again, so we have the filters panel open. We're going to expand this down, and there's a few different filters or filter types that we can do. So we can do basic filtering, where we simply just select the cities that we want to include on our visual. If we want to do exclude some, we could do it that way. I could do advanced filtering, where I could do input like logic-based filtering. So if I wanted to, in a string context, for example, or a string data type, for example, I could do contains the word new, and everything that had, or every city that had new in it would be filtered too. But what I want is the top n, in this case being 5, top 5. You can also do bottom, but just word of the wise that there it isn't a bottom n in here. You have to go to top n and then select bottom from there. So we want top 5, and then by what value? We're doing it by the sales value. And I'm going to apply that filter, and it's going to filter to the top 5 globally. So for example, if I wanted to filter the US, everything gets filtered except on this visual. What it's doing is it's taking the top 5 cities by sales and the entire data set, and it's highlighted the ones on it that are in the US. So for example, if I did Germany, nothing would be highlighted because none of those top 5 are in the US. So we want to edit the interaction type to be filter instead of highlight. So the way that we do that is we go to format and then we edit the interactions. So this took me a little while to get used to when I was first starting this, but when I first started using Power BI. But the way you do it is you have the table that you're filtering from selected. So even though we want this visual filtered, I'm filtering from this visual, the table visual here, and I'm going to edit the interactions that are being drawn from that visual. And you can see icons that popped up. Just so you can see it again, I'll turn it off. Edit interactions, the icons that popped up. So on this visual, there's 3 different options. We can turn off interactions altogether, which means that this visual would not filter at all when a country is selected on this table. We could change it to highlight, which is what it currently is, or we can change it to filter, which is what we want. So, for example, if I go to the United States, you can see Manila was filtered out, Seattle and San Francisco were bumped up, and then Philadelphia was input. So if I go to Australia, we have Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, Gold Coast, and Perth are now our top 5 cities in Australia. So that's how we edit interactions on a dashboard. Unselect that. So the last thing I want to do is add a title really quickly, add a logo, and then we will publish. So the easiest way to add a title to our dashboards is to insert a text box. It gets super finicky when you're dragging stuff around, so do this carefully. So we do global superstore sales and some quick formatting. 28 maybe. There's not quite enough blue on this dashboard, so we'll make the font blue. Okay, so a lot of teams like to have a team logo that they want to add to their dashboard. That way people know throughout the enterprise, if they're not on the team, they're going to the dashboard to use it, then they know exactly what team is coming from. So I have a JPEG file on my desktop that I'm going to insert as an image. I just got this off the internet. And adjust the size there and fit it nicely. So there we have it. We have our global superstore sales dashboard. As promised, now I'm going to publish it to a shared workspace. So a workspace is essentially just a repository that our shared workspace is a shared repository on powerbi.com that you can provision access to so that users can go there to use the dashboard instead of, say, sharing this file out. So I'm going to go to publish here, so home, and then publish at the top. And then it's going to open a window to all of, actually it'll automatically save it, and I'll just do global webinar. Oops, okay, so these are the different workspaces that I have access to with the login that I'm currently logged in as, which is just my tessellation email. So you can see the shared workspace, tessellation consulting, and then I have my own workspace that I will publish it to. So I'm going to select that workspace, and then it's going to publish. So then if I open up Power BI, make sure this is done. Cool. So the landing page for Power BI, go back there so you can see how to get to that spot. So I have the workspaces that I currently have access to. So again, you can see tessellation, but in my workspace, that's where I publish that dashboard. So if I go into, or the report. So if I go into the report here, and you can, again, give people a link or have them subscribe to this so that they get email blasts daily or weekly or however many times you want to drop an email to remind them to check the dashboard. They can come here and use the dashboard. It has the exact same functionality as it did in Power BI desktop. So you also saw one other thing that was on there. So this is the report that we created. We also created a data set, as I said at the beginning. I showed you the data model with the 3 different tables that we created. So this is the data set that now lives on Power BI service. We can actually give access to this data set in addition to giving access to the report. So for example, if I am an enterprise reporting team and I build dashboards for our users, but then I also build data sets that are like standardized data sets that I want to give access to, so people can build their own reports or their own dashboards using those, they can access these data sets. So I'm going to open up another instance of Power BI and quickly show you how to do that. One thing to note about Power BI data sets, which is the data type or the data source type that this is that Power BI is a limitation of Power BI, but it doesn't allow composite data models with Power BI data sets. And what that means is that if you have a Power BI data set as a source in Power BI, you cannot have any other data sources in that workbook. It completely locks out the ability to add, you can't even enter manual data in that dashboard. So just caution there. But if I wanted to add a source to that Power BI data set, again, it'll pop up a window with the different Power BI data sets that I currently have access to. And there we see global webinar. And I can show you why this is important too. If you like, again, if you're, let's say you're an enterprise reporting team. So we have our 3 different tables here, and we have all of the data here. So the main difference, obviously, between the data set here and the one that we imported originally was that we now have profit margin as a separate measure that is in this data set. When you're building your own dashboards, you're going to have a lot more columns, likely, and you'll also likely have a lot more measures that you're creating in those files. We only had time to create one here today, but you can see it here, and so that now is a part of this data set. And the main difference between viewing it here and then using it, let's say if you were to provide this workbook to somebody, is that if your objective in publishing Power BI data sets was to standardize data definitions for something as important as profit margin, for example, and you shared this out, I as a user can go and adjust this either on purpose because I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, or on accident. So, however, if I'm in the workbook where I connected to that Power BI data set, and again, I just selected it here, and then you can see the formula at the top. If I select it here, I don't have the ability to adjust the formula that makes up that that measure the same way as if I were connecting to an analysis services instance. I can't adjust the measures that I'm pulling in to my workbook. I can still add my own measures and my own columns or my own measures, but I can't adjust the ones that I've created and I've attempted to standardize as an individual. And so from here, I can just start creating as a user another dashboard. So category by discounts. And it's a mess right now because we haven't cleaned it up, but you can just start building another dashboard. So that's all I have. I see that there are a few questions. I'd be happy to get to those. Adam?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the first one. How is Power BI Desktop different from Power BI Pro?
Yeah, okay, so Power BI Pro is a license tier that exists within like the Power BI product. There's Power BI Desktop, which is a license. There's Power BI Pro, and then there's Premium, which actually has two different licenses that are underneath it. Pro allows you to publish to like your enterprise's shared workspace. That's the biggest difference. I believe that everything that you can do as a Pro license holder, you could also do as everything that you can do as a desktop, you can also do as a Pro user, but obviously not the other way around. But Power BI Pro is, again, it's a license type that unlocks more features inside PowerBI.com or Power BI service.
That makes sense. Okay, how about this one? Does Power BI identify the primary key while creating relationships, and or does the user have the ability to change it?
So Power BI does detect what the keys are. If you wanted to change it, you can also do that.
Cool. Does Power BI connect to data on Azure SQL Server using OAuth?
I believe that it does. That is a question that I'll have to get back to you on, though. But yes, you can access, I mean, like I showed before, if you go to more, you have access to all of the, like the Azure products. But I would be shocked if you couldn't use OAuth.
I would too,
yeah.
But we can follow up.
Yep.
When formatting country names to a different color, are you able to color one country a different color than the rest? If so, how?
No, not like, I mean, so the way that we formatted that is we selected the entire column. So field formatting, so we've selected country as our column. So not, no, you can't format individual rows like that.
All right. Is the view what we see, or does Power BI allow to create and customize the tooltips?
Yeah, you can customize tooltips. I actually just wrote a blog about this. So you can create tooltips, for those of us that don't know, so automatically most visuals create tooltips. That's the little box that we're hovering over, and so it just provides a quick snapshot of what the data is. And so if I'm using this one as an example, I can also drag in more tooltips. So if I wanted profit margin as a tooltip, it'll now be on there as well. And what I can even do from there is I can go to this little ellipses and go show as table. And then it'll show me the sales and the profit margin, everything that was on that tooltip in the table here. And then I can just go back to report. The other thing that you can do, and this is what my blog is about, and maybe we can link that in the chat, is you can create a tooltip that is basically a window into another sheet or another page in Power BI that you've like filtered on. Like, so if you created, as an example, like another profit view here on a different tab, you could, and it had like 2 or 3 visuals or something, and you wanted to have those 2 or 3 visuals as a tooltip as you hover over New York City here, you can do that. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but there's a lot that you can do with tooltips other than just have like your standard ones that are like what you're seeing right now.
Yep, and we've got your blog linked in the chat. So there's actually two of Gavin's blogs are linked in the chat, so check those out. Another question just came in. What is the best way to handle implicit measures? Get rid of them right away and create your own, or leave them as they are? Also, what is the best way to handle many-to-many relationships when your data is what it is?
Okay, so implicit measures, I guess I would ask like the data governance team in your enterprise. Maybe you shouldn't be deleting those because, like I said, maybe they've standardized those for some reason. But if, let's say, you're publishing a data set and you have an implicit measure in your data set, you can, and you've published a data set and you want to provide access to that data set, you can hide those measures from other users that are accessing that data set. And you can also just like hide, like, for example, if I go here and I go to hide, actually, I'll just do it on a measure instead. So discount, can go to hide. That will now be hidden from the data set that is on powerbi.com. What was the second part of that question?
It was, what is the best way to handle many-to-many relationships when your data is what it is?
Yeah, so Power BI can handle many-to-many relationships. So if I go into here, you can adjust the cardinality if you want to, or if you have the ability to. However, in Power Query, and so this is one of the steps that I did before this webinar. In Power Query, I can delete duplicate rows. And so on, I believe it was the returns table. Yeah. So on the returns table, there were duplicate rows. And so that created a many-to-many relationship that I didn't want. And so in order to do that, again, you just click transform. And then I would go to, with the column selected, remove rows. And then it's under remove duplicates there. There's many ways of dealing with cardinality issues like many-to-many, but that's, to my knowledge, the best way to handle situations like that.
All right, we've got through all the questions. Appreciate everyone for taking part and asking those questions. Gavin, anything you want to leave us with, or otherwise I can wrap us up?
No, this was a lot of fun. This is my first webinar and I was kind of nervous about it, but I'm glad I did it and I hope it was helpful. Please reach out if you guys have any questions. There's a ton of resources like blog posts from our entire team, which is comprised of very, very talented, very, very smart, much smarter people than I am that have all written blog posts. So our website, you can search by topic type or by tool. Feel free to use that to help answer some of these questions too. Otherwise, please reach out.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Tessellationtech.io and datacoach.com. Tessellationtech.io probably has the more blog posts that Gavin has been mentioning. But DataCoach and tessellationtech.io will list out all of our upcoming webinars. And you're getting lots of kudos on the chat here too, Gavin. So well done. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Keep an eye on our websites for the next upcoming webinars, live streams, whatever you want to call them. And we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.